In my previous podcasts, I spoke of causes of prejudice as well as why discrimination is a large problem in our society today. For my last podcast, I'll be focusing on ways to reduce bigotry, such as the effects of equal status contact, psychology of inevitability, and interdependence. There are many different approaches people can take to reducing prejudice, and there's no best or right way to reduce discrimination. Through my research, however, I've pulled out what I deem to be most effective and efficient to reduce prejudice. For sake of time, I will only be giving a brief summary of each, but if you're interested in learning more, I highly recommend picking up Elliot Aronson's book, The Social Animal. It covers a lot of different topics, but prejudice is chapter 7. A lot of people think prejudice is caused by misinformation or a lack of exposure, which it is, but they believe we can fight misinformation with information. So if we can change attitudes of people, then it wouldn't be far-fetched to say this would change people's behavior as well. However, social psychologists have found that it is difficult to change attitudes through education. Instead, if we change behavior, this will ultimately change people's attitudes as well, in theory. This is called cognitive dissonance, when your attitudes and behaviors don't match up. One needs to change to meet the other. To put it simply, if blacks and whites could come together under equal status, prejudiced individuals would come into contact with the reality of their own experience, not simply a stereotype. And eventually, this would lead to greater understanding. If diverse groups can be brought together under conditions of equal status, they stand a chance of getting to know each other better. Psychology of inevitability goes along the same idea of cognitive dissonance. Hypothetically, let's say I'll be inevitably in close contact with you, and I don't like you, I'll experience dissonance. To decrease that dissonance, I will try to convince myself that you are not as bad as I had initially thought. I will set about looking for your positive traits and will try to ignore or minimize the importance of your negative traits. While we are technically an integrated society, there are a lot of in-groups and out-groups. We don't work together and all have our own social circles. People tend to hold fast to the belief that we need to re-educate people before we can integrate. Instead, the psychology of inevitability suggests the sooner people believe integration is inevitable, the better. This leads into my next topic, interdependence. Mutual interdependence is defined as a situation wherein individuals need one another to accomplish their goal. To reduce hostility, we should reduce competition in the work and school environments. Instead, we should create a more cooperative atmosphere where everyone needs to rely on one another to accomplish a goal. Not only does this incorporate psychology of inevitability, but this also applies to equal status contact. If everyone needs to rely on one another, each individual is just as important as the rest. For a more in-depth look on interdependence, check out my page on reducing prejudice on my blog. I evaluate the concept much more than the brief summary I've outlined here. Thank you again for listening to my podcast, and I hope you learned something about causes of prejudice or how to reduce it. And I hope you can apply this to your everyday life. Thank you.